All right, welcome back to another episode here, Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
And Sean, we are continuing our discussion of a great book, Breakthrough Advertising. Again, if you've been listening to the series, what was it, 3 or 4 episodes we've been going through the book so far.
Yep.
There's a reason this like a textbook for not only if you want to be a copywriter, but if you want to have a deeper understanding of what it means to persuade in copy, in any kind of presentation, whether it be on a sales call, whether it be on the printed word,
PowerPoint deck.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
Display ad.
Yeah.
Trade show booth.
Yep.
You know, a lot of trade show booths are awful. And if they would put some of this, into it and a little less time on graphics,
I agree.
it could really, or at least the brochures that you hand out and those kind of things, it could really make a big difference. So there's.
Speaking of which, we were talking these latest Apple advertisements are just awful.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're trying to do.
Big brand stuff. And their quarterly report that just came out as we're having this conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
Tanked the whole market because
Oh,
iPhone sales were down. But doesn't everybody have an iPhone now?
Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
We're gonna have to
saturated.
We have to give them to kindergartners now and start buying them for kindergartners,
right?
Because all the middle schoolers have them.
Yep.
About half the elementary schools. So
yeah.
So I don't know who else. I mean, and $1,000 a pop, it's it's hard to keep buying those every update.
Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see how that continues.
Yeah.
I'm excited about today's episode. We're going to be talking about the 3 levels of creativity. We're going to be talking about personality of a product. We're going to be talking about splinter markets.
Yes.
The only type of prevention headline that actually works. That'll be cool.
That's interesting.
And then we'll also talk about what makes people read, want, and believe your advertising. So, but before we get into that, we have a beverage to talk about.
We do. We have. We're having our beer. We've moved on from our scotch. Now we're having a porter today, which is a new one I picked up called Anchor Porter. It is. I pulled up before our show started. I actually pulled up the website to anchorbrewing.com. So just to give you a little background, it's a blend of specially roasted pale caramel chocolate, black malts, along with top fermented yeast. Talking sales copy, so this is good stuff here. Creates complexity without bitterness, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's not exactly Rogue Brewery copy, but hey.
No.
I like when you pull the bottles out, I like the kind of the throwback, kind of shorty type, not the true shorty bottle, but the kind of like the old Miller Lite bottles.
Yep. That's exactly what I thought when I pulled it up. Those look like the old school Miller Lite bottles.
What I like about these is they're a little bit shorter, so they fit like in our fridge at home. We have a place for like soda cans.
Yeah.
And this size bottle fits nicely in there, and the door still closes, whereas the long bottles don't really fit. So that's kind of cool. So let me take a swig.
All right. Cheers.
Doesn't have as much flavor as I thought it would. It's kind of almost a little flat flavor.
Not very sweet.
There's like nothing just jumps out at you.
Must be bittersweet chocolate.
Yeah, or maybe it's the chocolate we had at the last episode, the bourbon caramel black sea salt chocolate we had. So I'm going to give this a few more swigs and see what happens. But some of these they need to breathe a little bit.
Yeah,
these darker.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. Just a little history. Anchor Porter became the first modern American porter-style brew when it was introduced in 1972.
Wow.
Over 40 years later, our porter continues to reward those who look beyond its intimidating appearance to discover its smooth, full-bodied drinkability. That doesn't look so intimidating to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that intimidating.
Yeah.
I think I would play that
poor
up.
Poor choice of words.
I mean, from a marketing standpoint, I think I'd play up that first porter in America type angle a little more.
Yeah.
Like since 1972, America's first, and it's still the best porter.
Based out of San Francisco, California.
Yeah. So
Anchor Brewing. So
yeah. So I'm not
bad.
It's not bad. It's better than that.
It's like you said on previous podcasts. Sometimes you have to let them.
Sometimes it takes a few sips.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is like I haven't brought it here because you can't get it around here, but Sweet Baby Jesus, which is like a peanut butter porter.
Yeah.
Peanut butter stouts, one of those two.
Oh, we got to try that. I mean, I got to try that.
But that one has to sit for like 10 minutes. It just has
Okay.
to breathe.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden it just like, it's really good. But at first taste, it's a little weird, but it's a peanut butter porter, which I know just sounds weird. Again,
I love peanut
the
butter.
Bud Light Night would not be happy with our drinking these fancy drinks.
These fancy beers. Yeah.
We'll have to get us a good mead.
Yeah.
For next
Oh,
show.
yes.
All right, so let's jump into chapter 5. So what we just came from the last episode, we went through 25 or 30 headlines. He's got like 38 different ways to create headlines, and I gave some of the examples I've used in the past that I've come up with. But now we're going to start getting into like, how do we actually, like those are little formulas and those are kind of guidelines, but how do we really start to create, like what is the job of a copywriter, a marketing director to really start, where do you find the ideas? That's kind of what these next 2 chapters are about. What do you need to be aware of? And I'm going to give some examples as we go through here of ways that I've come up with some stories. So I'll give you a couple of stories of a couple of promotions that I've written in the past. We'll talk about, there's a very famous product that has a really cool story behind it. We'll go into that. So first thing, though, that he talks about is the 3 levels of creativity.
Yep.
And for most people who are either trying to learn copywriting or they're just getting into the world of direct response marketing, maybe they find a book on copywriting or marketing, they'll tend to stick or want to stick in this first level of creativity, which is the least effective. And that is just kind of using a swipe file.
Yeah. Substituting things.
Yeah. So you pull out a swipe file, you find a headline that's proven, it's been proven to work. So you kind of just move some words around.
Yeah.
Replace your product, your niche with whatever they had.
We've all been guilty of it.
Yeah.
By the way.
And there's a time and a place for that.
Yeah.
And if you need to get something out, it's better than just coming up with something out of the air, because you are starting with something that's kind of proven to work.
Yep.
But they tend to only work, and this is a good thing. Like if there's an ad like that that's really working in a niche, if you want to hijack it and tweak it for your product while that other product is hot, you can kind of get some momentum. But if it's 10 years later, or if it's 5 years later or 18 months later, it may not work because everything around it has changed. One of the things he talks about in this chapter is he talks about how he said they become echo ads. If the product or the market or the timing is different, then the chances of success diminish proportionally. They become echo ads, ads that remind people of some other product.
Some other product, yeah.
So you have to be very careful if you're not.
So you could be you could be marketing for somebody else if you're not careful.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to be really careful about the timing, and that's something a lot of people overlook. But the best copywriters, some of the copywriters I've worked with, copy chiefs I've had in the past, one of them, he just had an incredible sense of like timing, that he could just nail kind of the overarching sentiment of the market. And he could tap into like exactly the conversation going on in their mind at the time and write to that. And his promotions always did not always, but when they hit, they hit big, like super big. He would do 5 to 10 what anybody else at the company would, and there was 13 people writing.
Yeah.
He would do more than the rest of the team combined, just by himself. It's amazing.
Wow. So
then there's there's a second approach. So that one's just kind of copy and pasting old headlines, and then there's a second approach. It's a little more difficult.
Using formulas,
and that's kind of using the formulas that and really that's what we talked about in the last episode. We gave some examples, but when we said something like give a name to the problem, that's a formula.
Yeah.
You know, you're not copying the headline exactly. You're
Right.
actually, okay, how could I give this? Again, I mentioned in the last episode that we're doing some weight loss stuff for. We came up with names for her processes that we could drop into the copy, not necessarily for the headline, but
Right.
that we could drop into the copy that made her processes sound unique and different and one of a kind.
Yeah.
And it's really the same as a lot of other processes, but the way she's combined them and some stuff she's done. But we gave them names.
Yeah.
And like when I worked in the financial newsletter industry, that was really popular. We would come up with these fake names that we would use. And it's for the same reason we talked about in the last episode. It's so people couldn't figure out exactly what we were talking about until they got into the copy.
Right.
So it kind of pulls you in. So that's the second level. And the third is a very analytical approach where you're doing lots of research. You're just kind of going in, you're just kind of feeling the market. You do some ads, you get feedback from the marketplace. He talks about it like a back and forth conversation. Mm-hmm. And you have to kind of listen. You have to know what the market's feeling. You do your research, market research, all kinds of stuff. And it's just basically you're doing a lot of research.
It's big. Especially if you're marketing to if you're in a target market or an industry that you don't know a whole lot about, that's a huge, you've got to do your research and get feedback and understand because, probably some copywriters could be guilty of taking a one-size-fits-all approach to, hey, it worked in this industry, it should work over here.
Yeah, and sometimes that's true.
Yeah.
Jay Abraham talks about taking something from one industry to another and it works. But that's not always true.
Yeah.
And it's why I think, I'm a big believer that a lot of business owners, CEOs, company owners, especially people that built the company from the ground up, can write really good copy because they've been so saturated with the concepts, the conversations, the feedback, what's worked, what hasn't worked, that they intuitively know some things that would take bringing a copywriter in months of work to figure out and learn. Now, sometimes a new copywriter can come in and see something that you can't see from the inside,
right? Because
it's just fresh eyes.
Yeah.
But I think in a lot of cases, business owners can write as good or better copy than a good copywriter, just because they've been saturated and enveloped by what's going on in their business and their industry.
They've seen all of the feedback from their customers. They've been to trade shows. They've had those conversations with their prospects or their customers who tell them, what they're dealing with. And so, and that, it's hard to replace that. That's important feedback.
He talks about it in the book. He talks about it as this massive conversation that's going on. And he says the copywriter will pick up a continuous flow of the most vital information when he's in the middle of that massive conversation.
Yeah.
And he goes in, he says, some of the questions you might be asking, when you're in that flow of information, some of the questions you might ask would be what causes one woman to make the most of her clothes at home and another woman to use her sewing machine only for minor repairs? Or how can we convince more people that it's safe to buy through the mail or safe to buy online? That was a big, at one point, that was a big concern. People were afraid to buy online.
Right.
So then they started introducing trust seals.
Right.
They started, verify and all these different little symbols underneath the order form. And that actually helped a lot.
Absolutely.
Why will men instantly buy an automatic potato peeler and women send it right back to the store again? These are old examples again, but you start to ask these nuanced questions when you're in it more. And that doesn't happen overnight. That can take weeks and months. So I'll give you an example. I read about Febreze, this air spray stuff.
Yep.
That product, if you haven't heard the story, just look up Febreze product development story on Google or something like that. I'll give you the gist of it. And the gist was they had a hard time selling that. It's now one of the top selling air cleaners, in the marketplace. But they had a really hard time selling it for a while. And they did all this market research. They brought in people and they watched them clean a room and watched how they sprayed it and like all this stuff. And they brought in all these experts and they finally noticed so they were trying all these different angles to sell it and nothing was really working. And what they discovered is once people would spray, they'd watch these different people spray it. And then right after the people would spray it, they'd stop and they'd take this breath in to smell the accomplishment. Basically what they came to was it was like the cherry on top of a clean room. Like they would make the bed, they'd clean the counters, and they would spray this stuff. And then it was almost like this reward feeling. Okay, I've got a clean room. And this was just like the flourish at the end. And that's what they start. And to this day, that's what they sell. If you watch the commercials, they do this whole spray and the people take a deep, satisfying breath that they're in this clean room now.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, some of the commercials they do now are smells like a gym, spray it and it doesn't smell like a gym anymore.
Right.
But the original thing that really launched and put them on the map was this feeling of satisfaction. It wasn't the smell. It wasn't the flavor, the flavor of the smells. It wasn't the packaging. It wasn't even that it masked odors. It was this subtle feeling of accomplishment of a clean room.
Clean room, yeah. Like you just...
And that's what they started marketing.
That was, like you said, the cherry on top. That sealed the deal. It was complete.
And it's something that was very intangible. Like it wasn't an ingredient. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was this, and he talks about that in this chapter. We're not going to be able, to go into it, but that's what he talks about. These feelings that you have to tap into that are just very kind of abstract. Like once you get outside of product dimensions or product, even benefits of the product, features and benefits, then there's a whole nother layer that you have to learn, you have to get into. Yeah. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next chapter as well, but in the way he talks about it. So then, anything you want to say on that before I jump ahead?
No, I mean, it's, I think we summarized that pretty well.
So the next thing is he talks about personality of a product.
Yeah.
And I think cars are a great example of this. Like when I say Volvo, you think safety.
Yep.
Most people. Honda, kind of think practical, reliable.
Reliable, yeah.
Frugal.
Fuel efficient, yeah.
Yeah, maybe even frugal.
Yeah.
The Honda driver. The typical Honda driver is probably not going to be wearing Ray-Bans and leather jacket or...
No. You see him in a...
khakis.
Yeah, you see him in khakis and a polo.
Yeah.
Probably,
frugal.
Yeah.
Dependable.
Yeah.
Then you've got the stereotypical, you've got your, Porsches, things like that. But then you've got, like Cadillac, the Cadillac buyer. Yeah. They want a luxurious feel. Right. They want to be noticed. And that's the brand personality. And every brand, every product, and even products within a brand line have a personality. And you need to know what that is to help market it. If you don't have one, you need to kind of foster it and create it and find out how people, and it kind of happens. It's harder to manufacture. It kind of happens, I think. Subaru has had a couple. Right now, they're really big on this whole idea of love. If you put your family in a Subaru, you love them. Yeah. But they also have this other identity, kind of a outdoorsy, adventure type thing. There's another stereotype as well for Subaru drivers. But so all these different brands have these different niches that they fall into. And it could be true for a manufacturing product. It could be true for sports teams. It could be true for, a lot of things. I mean, we talk about football a lot. Defenses have personalities. Are they hard hitting? Are they, aggressive? Are they very strategic? Or they, different personalities for different teams, different sides of the team. So honing in and figuring out your product or your company or your brand's personality is a big deal. Yep. And it makes writing copy a lot easier.
Yeah, it does.
And coming up with ads and images for the ads. And I tell you, a friend of mine, Kay Putnam, she's a brand. So she does graphic design, but she uses brand psychology when so colors, fonts, images, and she actually has a quiz on her website where you can find out kind of what your brand personality is. And there's, I think, 12 different archetypes that she's come up with that you can kind of nail your brand.
Right.
For instance, there's like a hero brand, which is like superhero, like you're the savior of your brand.
Yep.
And there's one that's more of explorer, which would be more like a Jeep, you know, where it's outdoorsy and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's all these different brands. The Sage, which is more of a philosophical wisdom, that kind of thing. The Professor, like a professor type brand, very analytical,
Academic
lots of facts and figures and things like that.
Yep.
And there's a place for all of those. But I will find the link for that and we'll post that on there as well.
You think of the Explorer brand. So what comes to mind? You said Jeep. I think of companies like REI, companies like
North Face,
do
everything REI sells, basically.
Yeah, basically outdoor equipment in general, any of those brands, you know.
A lot of bikes.
Yep.
Unless you get into and see, that's where you might like a mountain bike would be more Explorer. But then like a triathlon bike is going to be more Sage and like,
exactly.
you know, very technical, you know, 2.3 ounces, you know, lighter than this one and all that kind of stuff. Whereas a mountain bike's just, you know, maybe fun. Unless you're a mountain bike racer, then you're going to start leaning towards that way.
Right.
And there's usually a blend of two of those archetypes that you're kind of a dominant and a secondary.
And you can apply those. So what's crazy is you can apply those to every facet, you know, whether it be mountain biking, but in homes, you know, what is a typical home for somebody that does, you know, outdoorsy, you know, sometimes you think log cabins,
right?
You know, those type of environments where
it's not going to be a Tuscany villa.
No.
It's going to be something a little,
So
So you know, finding that and like I said, Kay Putnam, Kaye Putnam, PUTNAM.com.
Right.
She has a quiz right on her homepage.
Okay.
We'll put a link to that as well. So then he talks about, so we're moving through this pretty quick, but he talks about a lot, you know, you've probably heard that it's hard to sell prevention, right? Like you can't sell, it's really hard to sell prevention. You need to sell a cure or you need to sell like an immediate pain, not a future pain. And that is true.
Except
90% of the time, but there is a way to get around that. And he gives the example of life insurance.
Life insurance, yeah. Well, you were just talking about that Subaru car.
Yeah.
And that brought that to mind immediately because you said you're thinking about not yourself.
Right.
You're thinking about, aren't you thinking about your family when you buy a Subaru?
Yeah. Like their commercials even right now.
Yeah.
You know, they show teenagers getting in wrecks and walking away from the wrecks.
Yeah.
You know, they're showing the teenagers on the phone, hey, Mom, Dad, I'm okay, but I just wrecked the car.
Yeah.
And then it flashes to, you know, Subaru. You buy it for love. You buy it for the other people in your life, not for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the prevention angle that he's talking about that does work. So if I'm buying life insurance, I don't buy life insurance for myself. I buy it for my wife and kids in case something happens to me.
Right.
You know, so I underlined what he said here. He said, a man will not visualize future disasters occurring to himself, but he is perfectly capable of visualizing and buying preventatives from the image of such future problems affecting others around him. So he'll protect and prevent disasters from happening to the people he cares about. And this even works for, you could work this angle in even like a manufacturing situation. If you know the CEO really cares about his people or the project manager cares about his people, you could probably find an angle that says, hey, if you use this product, you're going to be more profitable.
Right.
Your company's going to be stronger. Your employees will have jobs longer.
Yeah.
Like you can really start getting into that angle and playing on that or tapping into that desire for him to take care of his people or her to take care of her people.
Yeah, and that's big too. You know, we think one thing that comes to mind in our industry is exposure to, you know, chemicals, you know, over time. And so a lot of companies and some of these raw materials are trying to cut back on some of the hazards that are in there. So if you can offer, you know, that being to protecting your employees, so you're not ultimately exposing them to stuff that you don't know what the long range implications are. But there's a good idea of what those could be.
Yeah.
And if you can cut back on that, not only are you protecting your employees, but you could be keeping yourself out of a lawsuit, 20 years down the road. So
yeah, and I've sold my coaching program with that idea in mind, because coaching is kind of a preventative thing for a lot of people.
Absolutely, yeah.
There are some people that are in immediate pain and they want it solved.
Right.
But you can stack on that, and you can build on that by saying this is going to benefit your wife. She's going to be happier.
Your
kids,
marriage.
you're going to be more connected to your kids, and they're going to grow up with a stronger, a deeper relationship with you, which is going to make them better parents in the future. So, like when I'm selling coaching, that's one of the things I look for is like I get people to see how it's helping and how it's preventing problems, how it's keeping, if your kid is 10 or 12. If you get this right now, you're going to prevent, because you're going to learn how to communicate with them. You're going to learn how to be there for them. You're going to not put work first.
Right, exactly.
You're going to learn some balance.
Right.
So when they're 16 or they're 18, they're not off doing something stupid and afraid to call you if they get in trouble, because you've built that relationship and that trust. So I will future pace and kind of talk about that kind of stuff as a way to prevent. But if I just say, it's going to keep you from, burning out. They don't think that's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
Unless they're already in it.
Right.
So
that'll never happen to me.
Nah, no.
That's the thought.
Never happened. So then, so moving on, he talks about splinter markets.
Yep. We touched on this a little bit in some previous episodes.
So I'll give you a quick example, and we can move on from this. You can read the book, but so for instance, the weight loss, right? So he says in the lose weight industry, there's two major subcategories. There's people who will do it for appearance reasons, and there are people that will do it for health reasons, right? Yeah. So those are two different reasons. And the appearance people are doing it. What may appeal to them is speed and ease of doing it. Whereas with the health people, they want to know it's safe, and they want to know it's going to last.
Yeah.
And all of those things kind of work together, because even if you have health, you're going to want the appearance.
Right.
But there's still going to be a primary that you can target in your copy. That's your primary appeal, and then you can always back it up later.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, you're going to look great too. Like if you're selling to the health people, yes, you need to lose weight. You're gonna save your life. And oh, by the way, you're going to look great too. You're going to turn heads when you enter the room.
And we hit on some examples, talking about, some of the splinter markets or problems specifically in health, infertility, diabetes, all sorts of things that creep up, sleep apnea, all those things that creep up when you're overweight that are symptoms of a bigger problem that are, splinter markets that you hone in on,
Yeah,
you worried about, like you said last week, we were talking, you're worried about waking up one morning and your husband being unconscious.
Yeah. I love how Frank Kern, he talks about this. Hey, Frank, if you're listening. I love how he talks about it. He hasn't said this much lately, but for a while he was talking about this whole idea of a fruit basket, right? So if you're selling a fruit basket, you can sell the fruit basket and all the benefits of that. Or you can sell the apple first, primarily, and why you should be eating an apple a day, and the benefits of pectin and the other things that are in an apple. And oh, by the way, I'd like to get, if you really want to boost things, you can get potassium from bananas, vitamin C from oranges, resveratrol from red grapes, and we put it all in one convenient package for you. It's called a fruit bowl.
Yeah.
So that's another way to kind of splinter out the market in your advertising, as you go after the apple people, the banana people, the pear people, the orange people, but they're all buying the same product, or it's a cross sell or an upsell, later in the process. So just a shout out to Frank Kern, because he's the first person I heard describe it in that way, and it's always stuck with me. So we'll have to email him and let him know he's mentioned in this episode.
Yep. He's looking very sophisticated these days.
He is, isn't he? I don't think he is any more sophisticated. I think he just looks it.
That look. I mean, think about his early days in flip flops and the long hair.
All right. That's how he went on stage. A little Matthew McConaughey.
Yep.
Yeah. So So Frank, shout out. I love
Yep.
love your stuff. So in summary, in this chapter, he says, look, this process of writing copy, of finding these ideas may take weeks. His words are, this process may take weeks or even months. And at the end of that time, you may have written 5 or 10 words. And I can attest to that as have a guy who has made a living writing copy. You can literally spend weeks and just have 5 or 10 words.
Yeah.
But if they're the right words, he says these 5 or 10 words will make up about 90% of the value of your ad.
Wow.
Or your presentation or whatever.
So it's time well spent.
If you're right, they may start a new industry. If you're wrong, nothing you write after them will save your ad. And it's pretty blunt.
Yeah.
And that's how important this whole,
Yeah.
everything we've talked about in the previous episodes, of sophistication, awareness, tapping into desire that already exists, all these different things that we've talked about, that's what it comes down to. If you don't get that first statement, that big attention grabbing headline statement right, your chances are the rest is going to be wasted.
Yep.
And it's a process. He says it's a process. You don't get, I love how he says this, you don't get an idea or a headline. You either build it or you unfold it petal by petal. You dig it out of the market research. You wring it out of the product. You read, you listen, you experiment for yourself. You work hard. You rub up against this product and this market so hard that they seep into your pores. And above everything else, you remember this cardinal rule of creativity. What you are looking for in this product and this market is the one element that makes them unique. The idea you want, the headline you want, the breakthrough you want are all wrapped up inside that product and that market. Nowhere else. And no outside rule, no outside formula will give them to you. You are facing a product-market timing relationship that never happened before. It is unique, and the solution you need is just as unique. Like, if you only read that, it's page 67 in my copy of the book, like that, you have to understand it and treat it that seriously, or you will not have a successful campaign. You mind if I share an example
go ahead.
of that? So,
you brought
some swipe files of stuff that I've written. So this one stands out as one of those kind of things where I had to really dig and research for it. So this was a letter back when I was doing financial copy, and the headline is World Record Oil and Gas Discovery. So this was for an energy investment newsletter. Early investors could make gains of 1,000% or more. And I'll say this for next week or when we talk about body copy a little bit too, but we'll come back to it. But literally, if you could see the first page of this picture, the first page of this promo, there's a little a picture down here, and it actually says World Record. It's got 3 guys that are actually on the job site.
Sure.
And it was literally a world record discovery, and it was buried in one of the like corporate presentations they do for investors on Wall Street. They put together these fancy PowerPoints and they try to sell because they need somebody to push their stock for them. So this was buried in like a corporate PowerPoint presentation that was on their website under investor media, buried like, just layers and layers deep. I probably had 40 hours digging through that type of stuff and watching presentations, flipping through PowerPoint decks before I found that picture. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, that's something to start with. Like here's a certified world record with a picture of them in the field. This was a natural gas, so it had this big flame. Right. And you start reading about it, and it was like the largest natural gas discovery ever at that time.
Huh.
So we built the entire promo.
So you started there and built everything.
Yeah, but what I really started with was I started digging through company reports, company files, and then when research. I saw it, and that's one of the things a copywriter can help with. And you have to kind of know the investor market and some other things, but like when you see the idea, it kind of jumps out at you. Yeah. Like you're like, that's what I've been looking for. That's the hook. If you don't get that feeling, then it's probably not it yet, and you just keep digging.
Right.
But once we did that, I mean, that ended up being a pretty successful promotion. Not like world record promotion, but it was certainly a good promotion.
Sure.
That did well, brought on some new subscribers, all that kind of stuff. So that's an example of just literally hours and hours and hours of work just reading. And that was one of the biggest shocks to me when I started writing copy, because I'd been in sales most of my life. And when I started writing copy, I thought I was going to be writing.
Yeah.
And I was.
Right.
But I was doing a whole lot more reading than I was writing.
Right.
And it didn't feel like work. Like to me, reading was always this kind of passive thing you do, or you do for pleasure. But it wasn't something you do for work.
Research reading is completely different, though.
Yeah. But I just associated that with reading.
Yeah.
It felt to me, just because of my upbringing and some other things,
Right.
you know, I wasn't creating anything at the time. Like you were just, it's like if you're building a house, if you're a contractor and you're building a house, going to Home Depot and gathering materials doesn't feel like work. It feels like a waste of time.
Yeah.
But it's got to be done
Yeah.
to get the materials
Yeah.
to build the house or take whatever project you have. So reading and research is like that. It's like going to Home Depot, gathering your supplies, making sure you got the right tools, packing your truck, going to the job site, and then you can start writing. Anybody that's done those type of projects know you can spend as much time doing all the other stuff, if not more, than actually building.
Yeah.
So that's that.
That's a great example. I mean, and you know what, you say that for copy, but you know, I would say too, for anybody that's in any part of sales, whether it's sales copy or outside sales, I mean, that there's a level of research that needs to go into understanding, you know, who you're selling to or selling for, and doing that research ahead of time. You know, so many people are guilty of, I think, winging it, so to speak.
I've been guilty of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
it's easy.
You just get lazy, and
Yep.
or you kind of get this strike of an idea, you know, that just kind of comes at you, and you think, oh, that's good enough, I'll just use that.
Yep.
But then it lacks the depth and the staying power that it could have
And
had.
even the best copywriters can get, you know, you have a whole lot of success, and that can sometimes be a detriment to where you think, you know what, I've been successful here. I've written these successful copy. I've been doing this for so long. You know, I'm just going to rely on my wit and some of my past successes I'll refer back to. And, you know,
he talks about that in here where, you know, that happens.
Yeah,
you know,
it does.
Copywriter goes to his old bag of tricks. And, you know, what's the old saying? Like, somebody says they have 20 years of experience, but they actually have 1 year of experience repeated 20 times.
Right.
There's a big difference.
Yep.
Like, are you learning and growing for 20 years, or did you learn the first 90 days and you've just repeated that from then on? You know, so
makes me think of the old line from Hoosiers. This is the way we've always done it. This is the only thing that'll work around here.
Yeah. So we got time to hit chapter 6 real quick. So chapter 6, it's kind of, this moves into part 2 of the book, the way he's got the book sectioned. And it kind of gets into writing, transitioning from now the headline and the research into actual writing the headline and body copy. So what did you find in this that, I mean, there's obviously the big 3 subheads.
Yeah,
there,
after your headline, we get into the body. We're on 6.
Yep.
Creates a new world for your prospect. So there are 3 dimensions that we have to look at. And those, I guess we start with, we kind of teased in a previous episode. Desire is one, identification, and beliefs. Those are the 3 dimensions of the mental world that we are looking at when we're writing our body a copy.
Yeah. So he says the length of your ad will depend on 3 factors. And this is an argument, not an argument, but a discussion that I get into a lot with clients and friends and other people is, how long should my copy be? You know, nobody reads long copy anymore. It should only be short copy. People's attention span's like 7 seconds, so they don't read long copy. And that's just not true. Like, so the saying around copywriters is it's never too long or too short. It's just too boring.
Yeah.
Right, if it's boring,
because if your copy's good, people will continue on to the next paragraph and the next paragraph.
Yeah,
and they won't even think that they've gone through 2 pages if it's good.
Yeah, if it's written well, it reads fast, it's hitting them. in these three thoughts and feelings that we're going to talk about.
Yep.
So what he says in here is, first, how much copy do you need to build his desire? Remember, the desire is already there. You're just building and tapping into it. Second, how much additional copy do you need to make him feel both comfortable and complimented by your ideas? And finally, how much additional copy do you need to make him believe everything you've just said?
Yeah.
So basically the trust aspect. So I don't know if they can hear the rain, but it is raining here if that's coming through.
I don't think they'll pick it up. But it is pretty pleasant out.
It's nice. It's like January and 65 degrees. It's crazy. So the three dimensions of thought and feeling that he talks about is, number one, desires. There are physical desires, material desires, and then sensual desires.
Yep.
And this goes back to the opening chapter we talked about. You cannot create them. You cannot diminish them. You cannot battle them. You can expand them. You can sharpen them, and you can channel them, and you can give them a goal.
Yep.
But you're not going to create the desire. You have to tap into a desire that already exists. So for instance, physical is the need to be thin, strong, or healthy.
Sounds like hail.
It does sound like hail outside, so maybe you can hear it on the show. And then the material is, possess money, a big car, a beautiful dress, nice house. And then there's sensual, such as thirst for a cold glass of beer, the need for a tired body to stretch out on a soft bed. Those are sensual desires. And then there's the identifications.
First, I want to mention, I underlined, to make this point, to make him visualize the wonderful new world your product offers him so strongly that he practically lives in it. And we've talked about this previously. And then to offer him that product, the method of doing this, intensification, and then we go on to discuss that in identifications. But, helping that prospect visualize that desire, whether it's a physical desire, sensual, what have you.
And if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that pyramid, you're basically working up and down that pyramid throughout your ad, depending on how much space you have to work with and things like that. I've often found that, the bigger limiter on copy is not the argument so much as a lot of times it's physical space, especially if you're doing catalog copy or if you're doing trade shows or brochures or things like that.
Yep.
Sometimes there's a cost associated with that. If you're doing direct mail or even a brochure, 8 or 12 page brochure costs more, but it may be worth it because if you go on a little longer, as long as you're not rambling and you're backing up stuff, that 12 page may sell a lot more and probably will. It will offset the cost.
Okay.
And in bottom line, the ROI will be higher typically on long copy. So then we talked about desire, so he moves into identification. He says, these are the roles your prospects wants to play in life, personality traits he wants your product to help him build. So he might long for social status. He wants, here's his example. Not only does a woman buy low-calorie food to become thin, but in so doing, she also builds a radiant, attractive, youthful personality. Not only does the man buy a car for the power, speed, and transportation it will give him, but equally as much for the projection of prestige, success, and ready-to-cash burn that this purchase communicates to his neighbors.
Yeah.
So there's always this kind of, that what it gets him and how it makes him feel, and how it makes him feel about himself or herself. That's something that you cannot overlook in the copy because that's the stuff that's really strong.
Yeah.
And you can't just come out and say it. You kind of have to weave it in back and forth into the copy.
No.
It's not something you just kind of, hey, this will make all your neighbors love you. I mean, like there's a time and a place for that, but it's not very often. It's usually much more subtle than that.
I was, I think I told you before our podcast today, I was telling you about the, this reminds me of the movie, Two for the Money. I was telling you, and it's a dated, I mean, it's probably well over 10 years old, but it's the first time I saw it this week. And Matthew McConaughey and Al Pacino in it. But so, long story short, Matthew McConaughey, he's a bookie, so they do sports gambling, but they're bookies, so they're out there pitching, their guaranteed locks for the week. And on one scene, he's talking to a guy, and he's talking to him, and I mentioned this earlier, is a guy that was betting kind of small potatoes, $1,000 bets at a time, but he was telling him, he was trying to sell him on a $20,000 guaranteed lock, with this upcoming game. And he was telling him, once he won him the 20, then he wanted him to go higher. He kept pushing the same guy to go even higher and higher. But one thing he would do in his conversation was he would help him visualize that car. And I forgot the brand of the car, but it was a sports car that he was going to be driving. I want you to imagine this, taking your wife out on the sports car after after this weekend of wins for you. You're going to be going out and you're going to be buying this car. And so he had him, the way he was talking him through it on the phone, it was amazing. He was putting him in the driver's seat of this car.
Seeing himself as a winner.
As a winner,
and,
yes.
And a big, not just the winner of the game or the bet,
right.
A winner in life.
Yeah, a winner in life.
And that's I think that's a great example of the two tracks, right? There's the winning at the actual transaction.
Right.
That's one thing. But then the real thing is being seen as a winner in life by friends and family.
Yep.
And that's a much, much stronger appeal than the other.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you can work that type of stuff in, it's just so much more powerful.
Yeah.
That's the what is it? It was the most interesting man in the world?
Yeah.
Was that Dos Equis?
Yeah, Dos Equis.
So now they're doing stupid commercials.
Yeah, I know. That
was
were
so much
stupid
better
to get away from it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they tried the younger version or his son or something, and kind of lost it. But now they're doing watering the field with Dos Equis, like football fields. It's just stupid stuff.
Yeah, eating grass.
But that most interesting man in the world, to be that guy, was the kind of the underlying appeal. That appealed to people.
Yeah,
I want to be that guy. I want to be James Bond. I want to be, the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah.
So then the final section is beliefs. I love this section. If you read, this is literally, if you were in the book, I'll show it on video. It's like one page of text, basically. But if you read this 1 page of text every day for 30 days,
absolutely,
you would be so much better advertiser and marketer and salesperson if you just read this 1 page over and over and over. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I was going through and I was highlighting, and basically the whole thing ended up being highlighted, that whole section. I just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
But he talks about beliefs are the opinions, attitudes, prejudices, fragments of knowledge, conceptions of reality that your prospect lives by. It's the way he accepts or rejects facts, the ideas and values which give him his comfort and which he believes are permanent and true.
Yeah.
These ideas may be shallow or they may be profound. They may be valid or they may be false. Perfectly logical or mere wishful thinking. Advertising, like science, must accept reality as it exists, not as it might wish to exist. Only then can it alter reality, not by smashing it into it head on, but by exploiting its tendencies and giving direction to its energies. Believing is a process of fitting new facts into certain established patterns of thought and conviction, using his kind of logic, not your own. So I kind of skipped around, and that was the highlights.
Yeah.
But if you can get that, so many people want to change people's minds, and you're just fighting an uphill battle. You've got to figure out how to tap. So the movie Inception comes to mind for me. You've got to figure out how to tap into what they already believe, what they already value, all that stuff, and figure out how to build your case on top of that.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so much easier to tap into a desire. That's why you have to tap into a desire, not try to create a new one.
Right.
You just have to figure out the angles. But I love that he admits and he states in here that a lot of the stuff that your ideal prospect believes could be faulty, could be invalid, could be completely wrong. But to them, it's the gospel truth.
It is.
And if you fight them on it, you're going to lose.
Yep.
And the other marketer who's willing to say, you're right.
Yep.
But have you ever thought about this?
Yep.
And just stack on it
Yep.
and add to it.
Yep.
And to me, like this, in this entire book, there's all kinds of good stuff. If I was training someone new to do advertising or write copy or manage campaigns, I would have them read this section every day for 30 days. Like this.
Because the default is for people to want to try to change the way you think.
Yeah. Well, the default is to think we're right.
Yeah, we're the ones that are right, and you need to see things from our perspective.
Yeah. And this is true in communication with your wife, with your kids. Like if you don't tap into what they believe, even if you think it's wrong, and even if it is wrong, like you have all kinds of proof that it's wrong.
Yeah.
But you have to start where they are.
Yeah.
And build from there.
That brings up, I'd mentioned this too, that same movie. And it's like that same movie that I was just telling you about, Two for the Money. So Matthew McConaughey, he calls a guy up and he's like, I got a lock. And this guy's like, man, I can only bet this much. I think it was $1,000.
Yeah.
And so he's like, because he's wanting to put a whole lot more, more money than what he's willing to.
Right.
So he's trying to change his, belief. This is what he's been used to gambling every week. So he's at a rut. So he's like, I got to hold on just a second. So he gets off the line, talks to his mentor, Al Pacino, who tells him, and this was pretty profound. He said, the only thing you need to know is that every one of these guys you talk to are in debt to their bookie.
And they're looking for a way out.
And they're looking for a way out. And that doesn't change. So he got back on. And knowing that, he had the confidence with that belief system of saying, you need to get out. This will help you get out of the hole. Because he was focused on his reality.
Mm-hmm. And I told you when you shared that with me before the show, I said that I saw that a lot in the financial newsletter industry. A lot of investors that buy those newsletters, not all of them, but a lot of them, they're looking for the home run to make up for lost time. To make up
for the last,
they missed the big run up in the 80s because they were so busy working. They weren't investing in their 401k. Now they're retired and they're trying to make up for lost time.
Yep.
And that, doesn't always end well.
Key home run, Hail Mary that'll get them.
And that's why you see those type of advertisements, claiming 1,000% returns and all this other stuff because that's what people want.
Yeah, that's what exactly.
And when you try to, for instance, oil prices right now as we're recording this are like way down. Right? Gas is cheap, oil prices are down. You could not sell an oil or an energy newsletter right now if you tried. Like it just wouldn't work.
Right.
But when oil hits $150 a barrel, that's when that promotion that I shared earlier, that's when it was written, was when oil was like $100, $150 a barrel, natural gas was up, whatever it was, because everything was hot. It was moving up.
Right.
And people, the best investors do the opposite, but the majority of investors, they ride it on the way up. And that's why it keeps going up because they pile in as it goes up, right? So you could try to fight that belief or you can tap into that belief and you can sell from there. Now that sounds kind of sleazy and scammy sometimes, and it can be if you take advantage of that.
Yeah.
It's one reason I don't write for that industry anymore because I didn't like it.
Right. Right.
And the very people that were attracted to that type of letter were the very people that were not emotionally fit to be great investors because it takes a different brain to be a good investor.
Yeah, they weren't all Warren Buffett.
No,
Warren Buffett's.
Yeah, Warren doesn't buy any of those. I don't
no,
think. So you have to be careful with the stuff, and we've talked about that in early episodes. We've talked about use this for good, not for evil. You can take. This is some of the same psychology that cults tap into.
Absolutely.
And everything else we've talked about in the past, con men. So you do have to have a moral standing for yourself, and you have to draw a line somewhere.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you have to understand that you're not going to change beliefs. You have to tap into what they already believe and then build from there.
Right.
So I think that wraps up chapter 5 and 6.
Yep.
And there's still some good stuff ahead. And we've got some other short stuff we'll be dropping into.
So to set them up for kind of a teaser for upcoming is where we get into body, we get into writing.
Yeah, the meat
more of the body, the meat Well,
the
we
meat
kind
of
of
the
hit
copy.
on the, what we need to look for when we're writing that, but then we'll get into getting into breakthrough copy.
Yeah, so he talks about 7 different techniques
Yep.
of breakthrough advertising. So we're going to go through those. We'll probably have to, that may be, I don't know, we'll have to look at it, but that may take
That's a show in and of itself.
7 episodes to cover
Yep.
the seven techniques. But we touched on some of them, and then we'll be expanding on some of those. Then we'll get into kind of the final touches, and I'll give some examples of kind of how I've written copy in the past and what's required and that kind of stuff. Whether you're building and again, I just want to keep reiterating that whether you're building a PowerPoint presentation for a board or for a PTA meeting or whatever,
Right.
if you will apply these principles to that,
Yeah.
you'll find yourself much, much more successful
Every time.
You'll persuade more, you'll influence more, and who knows, you may even end up being like king or something. I don't know. People will love you, fall at your feet.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
kinds of stuff will happen.
We don't want to overpromise,
No, but that's just the truth.
but it works for Trump.
Yeah, just promise the world and see what you can do from there.
All right.
No, use this for good, and let us know how you're liking these. Like, give us feedback on the website. There's comment boxes on, I think, every episode. You can reach out to us. Do we have an email address on there?
We do.
So
persuasionbythepint@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on the contact form on the website.
okay.
So,
So yeah, send us some feedback. Let us know if we're on the right track, wrong track. If you got a book you'd like us to go through.
we're also considering, doing some interviews,
Yeah.
bringing in not only in studio here, but also, via Skype, having some guests on our show, which we'll probably do. I've thrown out some queries, and Sean, you've got some contacts in the copywriting and marketing world that we can bring on. So, we want to kind of vary the content. I like this. This is the good book. I want to get through some of the, some of the meat of this, and then we can move on to some other areas too. But we're open to other ideas as well within the realm of persuasion.
Yep.
Persuasion.
Yep. So we'll do that, and check out the site because we'll put up some of these samples of stuff that I've written in the past that you can see. And
so overall, did you have any
on the beer,
the follow-up tasting on the beer? Has it gotten?
I think it did get a little bit better. You finished yours, so it must have got better for you.
It was good. I liked it.
So it got a little. I think it could have been the chocolate that we had the last episode.
Probably so.
That
That
was kinda
influenced
messing
a
with
lot
it.
of our palate.
Yeah.
Having that salted, the bourbon chocolate, bourbon chocolate.
But yeah, it has smoothed out, and
Yeah.
I think it has a little more flavor now. So I think that's probably what it was. So
Good
we'll have
deal.
to cleanse our palate. Bring some seltzer water next time to cleanse the palate.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. As always, persuasionbythepint.com. Find us on any of the podcast platforms, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher Radio. Leave us 5 stars. We'd be grateful for that. And thanks again. We'll see you next time.
See ya.